You ready?
Tag your
You ready? I'm ready. We agree. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Between Two Borders. My name is Joe Posada,
Anacleto Contreras.
and we're glad that you're joining us for episode two. Hopefully, you enjoyed episode one. It was our first recording, obviously, but I think we just definitely had really good topics that we discussed. I think, right? But yeah, how are you doing today, bro?
I'm doing good. I feel like I'm wearing the same colored shirt, and I just kicked my camera. But hey,
Right.
everything's good. No, but yeah, I'm not wearing the same shirt. Right? It's just a different type of shade of blue.
I think so. See, I had to change because I wear like black t-shirts like 24/7, and so I'm like, I gotta switch it up because then everybody's like, oh, he's just wearing the same thing, which I do, but not the same thing, just the same style.
you
Different
he
cap, Oak Cliff cap again. Shout out to
wears
them.
the wears the same thing, different underwear. That's how we do
¿Verdad?
it.
I'm right.
We got to shower. We got to shower. We
Got a
shower,
shower, right? This is like
right?
I forget. Oh man, I forget. A good friend of mine mentioned that I was I was a statue when it came to pictures or like to events or whatever, because I would always wear during that time it was like cold weather, so I would always wear my boots, blue jeans, and like a polo and like a different cap or same cap. But like we would meet like once every 2 weeks, like on a bi-weekly basis. So every time I came, like obviously I washed my clothes, and it just so happened that it was like I'm just gonna wear this, and it was literally the exact same thing I wore last time. And so they're like, no, for real, bro. Look, and they showed me like three photos back to back of like three different meetings within a 6 month period. I'm like, hey, bro, I'm sorry. Like, it is what it is.
Say, don't hate the game, or what is it,
No,
Joe?
don't hate the player, hate the game.
There you go. There you
How is it,
go.
verdad? But yeah,
No,
we had
no.
a dale.
No, but yeah, so one of the things that we would like to focus, Joe, I think, is expand more on when we started conversating about us, the different degrees that we attained, and interact more with data that we know of now, to put things into a perspective, and then dive more into, does us having degrees make us successful, and how does that even look for people like us?
No, for sure. I agree because I think yeah, no, I agree. Like I had a I remember being an undergrad, I would always say shout out to Nina one time for the one time. She would always catch me, when we talk to students. We worked in the same office at UTD, and I would always tell students, start off with students like, don't like something about statistics or numbers. Like don't let numbers dictate your life, and just statistics in general. Like don't it's like numbers tells us one thing, right? And now as I've gotten older, I've realized like, oh man, like maybe like we fall within that whatever percentage of success, but then what does that mean for those that don't? Like, are they not successful? Or are they, they're just, oh, they didn't go to college, so they didn't do anything with their lives? Which obviously that's not the case, right? Because we know a lot of people that on both ends that don't have a degree, and man, they're successful in their own way. I mean, I know a couple of people that they're making it, they're banking more than I am for sure. And then I have other folks that have a degree, and unfortunately, they've been stuck, in a sense. So yeah, I think that you're right. It's an interesting concept for sure.
No. So the data that, whenever you hear us throwing numbers out, it's the data that commit, shout out to commit if they do end up listening. Hopefully we use their data in the context that it was given, but we're going to be using, commits data, the scorecards that they have been doing. They're doing a great job. And I feel if we truly, listen to them and analyze the data as it needs to, we can make good strides in success for our students, and just to make sure we do develop well-rounded students to have success in anything that they want. So looking at our numbers, Joe, back in 2009, it's interesting that I don't think much of a needle has increased in college completion rates from the previous years. It looks like it has actually decreased. So for our year, graduate college completion rates have been 28% of students that completed a 2 to 4 year degree within 6 years. And I mean, I really don't remember the exact number of those students that graduate with us during high school. Do you remember that number, Joe?
No, I mean, I think it was like anywhere between like upwards of like 250, maybe not capping no more than 300. I think. If I man, I usually keep good at transcripts, but the one that I don't have is a high school one. but I'm sure that there was like, so what was the number again? 20, you said 28?
28%.
28%, man. So that tells us that's 20. Let's say, assume that there was 300 students. So that 20% of that is what? 246, man, 60, 76, 80 something students, maybe something like that out of the entire senior class. Like actually persisted for what the next 6 years, right after
Yeah, they
after graduating
completed.
and completed a post-secondary education, which is interesting because like we look at like especially nowadays, like you said, now the current percentage is what, 24%,
Yeah.
and that's is that Dallas County or Dallas ISD?
So Dallas County has a 24%, and
Okay.
then Dallas ISD alone, based on what's on Commit's database, it's actually
I think
18%.
18%, right, man? So
Yeah,
that's, so yeah, so that's
18%.
extremely much lower than we were at, and we would think that times would have changed, right, to an extent, because I mean, at least when I think about when we were in high school 10 years ago, there was a lot of new things coming in. Like, if I remember correctly, the first time the SAT was we were taking it on campus, right? If it wasn't with our class of '09, it was class of '08, where the vouchers were sent to the school, and then we were just taking those. Man, we even took the AccuPlacer on campus, and not knowing what any of those tests or exams did for us, just being told, hey, we're dedicating a whole day or half a day for everyone to take this exam. At least I know I didn't know what those exams were, but that's interesting. 18% in Dallas IZ, and then 20 24 28 24 28 or
28% for our
28
class,
yeah, for our class. So, and it's 24% for como se llama,
Dallas County. Yes,
Dallas
sir.
County, this for at least for the data that they have on there, which is interesting. And like, even if we go a little bit more in depth on it, like right now, like I see, like I'm looking at the dashboard right now, and I see like Hispanic, Latinx students. We have an 88% graduation rate, which is pretty good. But when we compare that to college enrollment, it's only 48%. But then that brings up the question, like, what does this number represent, right? Is it representing that only 40% of students are being successful by enrolling in college, and therefore we define that as success? Or are we saying that out of the 88%, only 48% are continuing, right? But whether or not if they didn't enroll, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not successful, because I think most of this work and most of this data is to just kind of show also the 60 by 30 plan that exists, but we're trying to get 60% of the population with a post-secondary education by 2030, I believe. We'll go back in that and just verify that. But I think that's definitely interesting for sure to look at with those statistics. So it kind of goes back to like our experiences in high school. Um, like when we were applying, I remember, again, going back to like the SAT. The first time I took it, I didn't know what it was. Like I literally scored a 200 on each section, on the reading, the writing, and then the reading, writing, and the math, or whatever the third section was, which was a different score, right? But I mean, it was like 200 on each, so that was what, a 2 4 a 600 compared to now, like nowadays, like that's definitely well below the average. And I think even as of last year, the average for the ACT was 16, no, 18. I think it was 16 or 18 for the ACT across the board. So, which is interesting, just like in looking at those exams, and those exams are supposed to tell us that we're college ready. So that's interesting.
I mean, do they have that number as well, Joe?
I know they have it I know they have it on the Dallas ISD like fact sheet, where to show you like all the stats. I'm sure we can definitely like come back to that
Because
on our
because
next up.
that's yeah,
Mhm.
that's interesting though, Joe. Like, I mean, for them just to determine, your success in college by the SAT. I mean, the SAT does not take into account the emotional intelligence of many students, right? How well
Exactly.
they can cope in stressful environments. And one of the things that I always say is, our population, uh, you know, given the other circumstances that we grow up in and we have to, persevere through. I mean, we have a high emotional intelligence, and majority of the times we end up having more success than individuals that, have a higher IQ. I feel that, individuals that have a higher, I guess, emotional intelligence can outperform, individuals with higher IQs. But because the last scorecard that came out, Joe, they have college readiness at 40% for 2017 high school graduates who took and scored an 1110 on the SAT and 26 on the ACT. That's
Ooh,
14% of 2017 high school students. That's
dang.
that's that's low. I mean, this is Dallas County. So
Okay.
I mean, Dallas County. I mean, I don't know how many students overall, but looking at just Dallas ISD's numbers alone, I mean, that's a very small number that are actually ready to go to college, right? And this could be a 2-year, 4-year degree, but I don't know. I think I don't know. I think that data representation is kind of flawed in a sense, just because it doesn't take many attributes that we, I guess, speaking just from our experience, it's really not true attributes, right?
Mm,
Because SAT doesn't teach you how to, go talk to your professors. The SAT doesn't teach you how to, work under pressure.
no, for sure. No, and I agree, man. Like it's one of those. I mean, and I think that's like determining grit, right? Like all of these things like I feel like a lot of our students not because of the lack of motivation to learn or push ourselves to read more, right, to be more adequately prepared to come into class doing our homework and preparing for exams and what have you. I don't think I don't want to I don't think that any of our students like we're like, oh man, I don't want to learn, right? I think is that there's a lot of attributes, there's a lot of things that are going on that we have to deal with, right? Like we are, like, again, we're all dealing with something, and I feel like with family dynamics and what have you, so oftentimes a lot of our students are supporting, family members or even the family. Oftentimes we've come into instances where some of our students are like a third of the breadwinners, right? Mom, dad works, and then the son is also working. So, I remember having a student from Sunset. He was working crazy hours, 30, 40 hours a week already, almost full time, but he was doing it after school and the weekends. And then having to go to school. And he was very, very smart. And so but you looked at his report cards, I was like, oh, like, he's an average kid and what have you. But when I tell you that when he took that ACT, man, he was like 4 points away from being having a perfect score. And you ask yourselves like, wow, like obviously he's a very well test taker, but not only that, you have to know the content, right? You have to understand breaking down in order to take that exam. And he took that on his first try. Imagine with the little preparation, what can that do? I mean, that student, he would have been, como se llama? He could have easily been a perfect score right there. So it's just, so there's a lot of factors that are not taken into account, I think, based on that number in itself with the SAT or ACT. So I feel oftentimes that is very unfair that a number represents us, saying like, oh, like, you know what? Like I remember when I took it, like, oh, you got a 18. It's okay, don't worry about it. You're not college ready. Or even I think even a 16. Like I was like, you're not college ready. I'm like, well, says who? A number? But granted, I feel I definitely was not college ready. So going to that number, saying that those students that are not, imagining that percentage of students not being college ready and yet going to college, what does that do for them? So are we then setting them up for failure? For them not to be successful? Because I know we both of us struggled our first semester at our respective campuses. So I mean, it's an interesting conversation around just like, college readiness and what are we doing? Are we preparing them academically, or are we preparing them for the entire college experience? And if so, how do we do that?
Yeah. No, I think that's a good question. I mean, to pose to even our audience, and more especially, those individuals that are in leadership positions within Dallas ISD or many of those nonprofits, right? What are we doing to make sure that, knowing, because like one of the things that I feel is it's fraudulent behavior when we graduate high school students with a 7th grade education, right? To me, that's fraudulent. Like you're basically lying and conferring a degree to an individual that is not ready to graduate, right? Send
Mhm.
them off to college knowing that they are going to drop out and then come back and blame it on the system because it didn't prepare them enough, right? There's a lot of things that we cannot control, but that is one of the things we can to make sure that we give an adequate education to our students, and
Mhm.
not just academia, but social emotional teaching how to handle, how to think about things that they would not know, things that we had to learn whenever we were in college or even after we graduate from college, right? And that's life. I mean, we teach kids how to be resourceful in high school, best believe they're going to be resourceful once they get to college, right? Because we had to be forced into going and talking to our professors, right? It took
Yeah.
us a conversation with white mama for us to, you know, break that shell and go and talk to them, right? And I mean, other people will use us as a success story just because we made it, but I mean, you know, they can't have this success if they were not there to whenever we were about to drop out, right? And more especially now that, you know, when we got the master's degree. I mean, still, you know, from my perspective, I mean, it's just a degree. I feel like I lost more of myself and my happiness trying to achieve that piece of paper with those two pieces, with those three pieces of paper, right? And you know, who knows what my life would have been if I didn't, you know, pursue. I mean, I don't know, probably would have ended up in the same cycle as my parents, right? And you know, that is not the mission that our parents, you know, wanted for us whenever they came to this country, right? But it's an interesting concept, and it's a good question to that you pose to ask other individuals, right? Are we setting up students for failure intentionally, right?
Yeah. No, and I think like even follow up, like it's like what like yeah, like going back to like reflecting on like literally 10 years ago, like
Yeah,
what are some of the things that that for us like that we learned while we were in high school prepping. I mean, again, like I remember, and like not, I mean, we didn't understand. I know I definitely didn't understand the college process. Yeah, we had advisors that helped us, and shout out to them. I mean, at some point, like we give credit where credit is due, and to some point and extent, they helped us, to understand a few pieces here and there, and maybe like and so and another question made for us is like, am I or are we being too hard on them, expecting them like, well, you were in that position to advise me and expected to like be able to understand the entire process, or was it also a learning curve for them, because it was they were also just starting, right? But like going back to really like I know I didn't understand. I know my mom would always, my jefecita would always tell me like, hey, you're gonna go to college, and my dad was like, well, you're gonna go to work. And I was like, all right. So I guess we'll do both, going to school Monday to Friday, and then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday go to work, come back home, like most of us. And then like for you, I know like you traveled, you were 3 hours away from home. So it was like, being away from family in that sense. And so like it affects us, right? Because I mean, we struggled academically the first semester. I know, like you mentioned, a shout out to Ms. Mag. She helped us a lot. I mean, it didn't hit me how unprepared I was until she literally drove up to campus. She sat myself down, Nina, and other colleagues, other classmates that we went to high school with, and once I figured out, oh wow, 4 of us from Adamson are here at UT. Great, now I know that. But then it was like it took her that drive, that connection to come and tell me, have you talked to your professors? And I'm like, why would I talk to them? And they're like, well, they have office hours. Ask questions, ask for help. And I'm like, I'm supposed to do that? Like, like simple things like that, it just, to some is common sense, and shout out to them, that you figure it out. Great. Like, that's part of it, but for me, I didn't, because I feel like going to college was not a priority, though it was like I was there, but I was focused on still working, here and there. I was working 3 jobs at a time, on campus, working landscaping with my pops, and then working in a block, doing those 3 jobs, and it was good money. And so, I mean, I was making good money. And at some point I was like, man, like I'm getting paid like to work, 3 jobs is a lot of, it's a lot of jobs and a lot of hours, but it's a lot of income too. And then that kind of leads it to another comment that we talked on the previous episode about, like, why, how um, Latinas are outpacing men, like Latino men, and attaining a post-secondary education, right? Like we're being outpaced, and some of the research shows that it's because, like, oftentimes, I guess psychologically or what have you, like men, young men are thinking like, oh, like my dad is the breadwinner at home, so it's my role now. Like I'm now the man that has to provide for my family, whether or not they already have a family or they don't. And so they're like, working as much as they're going to school, and then it gets lopsided. Now they're working more than going to school, and because they're getting paid better and what have you. And I think you mentioned a comment like, they're thinking about today money, right? Today's money, like how much money am I making right now, and not understanding that an investment of education for 4 years is gonna, you know, significantly impact how much income they're gonna have versus just working the job that what they're doing. And oftentimes that may be the case, and sometimes they may not be, depending on the field that they go into, what have you. But I think those are just interesting things to keep in mind when we just look at like success, how do we define success? Do you necessarily have to go to college to be successful? I mean, it worked for us, right, to an extent. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like I wouldn't be where I'm at today for sure if it wasn't for my degrees. But at the same time, like I know that like my but by going to college, it didn't help me. Well, it didn't develop like with the work ethic that I already had, because that I had since I was 8. Pushing a lawnmower with my dad. So it's like those life experiences, different experiences, is what kind of helps us kind of shape who and what we are, and what we do. So I think so that's just like an interesting thing, just looking at statistics and data, and kind of like, oh man, like this is how do we portray this, and then ultimately, we know that a lot of folks in leadership, whether they're within the district, within CBOs, nonprofits, and what have you, like they use these numbers to make the case for funding and what have you. But it's like, but ultimately, like, are we really keeping ourselves accountable for the work that we're doing to ensure that our students are being successful and being prepared? So are we coming into a classroom and telling everybody the importance of going to college, or are we walking into the classroom and just enrolling everybody in college? So what are the two, the pros and cons in doing that? All right. And the importance on that. So I think that's just something that for us to definitely, I think like we can definitely dive a little deeper in that down the road.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And Dallas ISD has created a lot of initiatives for many of the kids, right? And I mean, I don't know. We can, dive into that data and just, get more data behind that. But if the result has been the same, I mean, what has been what is the success of those initiatives if the end results have been the same, right? Because the end result that individuals in that they want to do is students graduate from college, right?
Mhm.
And like you said, the 60 by 30, right? I mean, of course, they're going to get a large number of individuals that graduate with an associate's degree because, they have them there as an option, which is a good option, right? But then we go and have that conversation, at a broader scale, right? Is college classes worth more than AP classes in regards to, you getting taking a college class in the Collegiate Academy more impactful, more better than you taking an AP and scoring a perfect score on one of the AP classes, right?
Mhm.
And how many of the students know how to navigate college while navigating high school, right? And what the pros and cons between that, right? Because a student that graduates from high school with a 2.1 GPA in the college level, I mean, I don't think they have a good path forward. Um, than a person that graduates high school with no associate degree, but in the top 10% of the class with good financial aid money. And I mean, that's when you start comparing and contrasting different resources and the different outcomes. But no, I mean, just a lot of stuff, like you said, Joe. I mean, I don't know if our students are not interested in college or interested in, working than rather than going to school. And I guess realizing that if they jump on YouTube, I mean, they could make
Right.
more money than going to college. It's just a different conversation and different framework. And I mean, it's a valid conversation, valid understanding that students are having because I mean, higher education is not for everyone, right? But education is, and education is whatever we want to get ourselves educated in, right? Understanding how to take pictures. I mean, still a lot of individuals, I mean, that's a good market, knowing how to take pictures, editing and stuff like that, how to record videos, edit videos. That's, I mean, Adobe, like all of those things. I mean, you don't need a college degree, but many individuals are doing that because not that they're afraid of school or not that they won't have success. It's just, I guess, their decision not to.
No, 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 and I totally agree, man. Like there's some fields where college degrees is not gonna do anything. Not that it's not gonna do anything. It's like it's oftentimes like with sometimes not the degree itself, but oftentimes the certifications that you need. I have a friend that I know that, like, he went into a specific field and he dropped out of school and just focused on it. And then next, it was like, well, at this rate, it's all about the experience. How much experience you have in the field. And oftentimes that's the case. I would like, for me, like I would always question, like, hey, what was it like Oh man, the music in the background is just beautiful, right?
Yeah.
But it's just like one of those things like, well, how do you like for him it was like, I don't need a degree, I just need the experience and the certification, and but that's still schooling, right? So even though it's not your traditional, but it's what the technical side or occupational side, that only maybe needs 9 months of education, and the rest of it is experience, and that's it, right? And so I think that's that kind of pushes us for us to have a future conversation about like what does that look like, and kind of like, and I think in our next episode we'll definitely dive into a little bit of our like our more of our experience in college, and how we were top 15%, top 10% at Adamson, to an extent academically. I guess we were academically ready, right? And when it comes to college, like I at least I know that I felt like I was a big fish at Adamson in a little pond. So that's how it was painted to me. They're like, oh no, you're gonna have it, you're gonna be good because like you're number 6, you're whatever, like you're gonna be fine. I was like, all right, cool. So man, UTD should be a piece of cake. First semester came by, man, that thing came by hard, and it was midterms, and I was out of 17 credit hours I was taking, I only had 1A out of all the rest of the classes were but failing. So it was like, so I think our next episode we'll definitely dive in a little bit more.
1.6 GPA, Joe. Midterm 1.6.
Right, yeah, exactly, right. 1.6, 2.0, man, together. What was our good friends, well, I say good friends, but like we are our mentors when we were at Adamson, they would tell us that
4.0.
they had a 4.0 combined, and I would always be amazed by this. So like, man, they got 4.0, that's dope. And like, yeah, we had 4.0, but it was both of our GPAs combined together, so it was a
Right.
2.0. So it was just those things like that. And so I hope definitely in our next episode we'll touch on that, the experiences itself, and kind of maybe have a little bit more conversation about the numbers itself, but then focus really more on the experiences, right, that we've had, and then because it aligns a lot to the work that we do. So any final thoughts before we wrap it up
No, we're good. We're good. We'll save it for
for
next
next time?
episode.
Next episode, because 10 minutes later we're still trying to wrap up.
Yeah, we're still trying to wrap up.
Alrighty, well, thank you all for tuning in. This has been Between Two Borders. Again, my name is Joe Posada,
Anacleto Contreras.
and we're closing out. Thank y'all.
Deuce.
Deuces. Peace.